What happens when your closest neighbor, a nation you've shared peaceful borders with for over 150 years, suddenly becomes a looming threat to your sovereignty? Canadians are asking themselves that very question as the Trump administration, emboldened by authoritarian ambitions, sets its sights on undermining the international order and even hints at annexing Canada. Canadian Member of Parliament Charlie Angus recently delivered a blistering speech in Ottawa, calling out what he describes as the gangster behavior of former President Donald Trump and his allies. This impassioned address wasn't just rhetoric. It was a rallying cry for Canadians to stand firm in defending their national identity against external threats. In this video, we'll explore the growing anti-Trump sentiment in Canada, the economic implications of a nationwide boycott, and why the battle for Canadian sovereignty is more urgent than ever. During a passionate speech in Ottawa, Charlie Angus did not hold back. Referring to the Trump regime as gangsters and drawing parallels to Russian President Vladimir Putin, Angus emphasized the need for Canadians to unite against rising authoritarianism. His words struck a chord across the political spectrum, with leaders, activists, and ordinary citizens rallying behind his message. On the eve of the 60th anniversary of the Canadian flag, Angus urged Canadians to reflect on the values their nation stands for: openness, inclusion, and the rule of law. He framed Trump and Musk's authoritarian ambitions as a direct threat to these ideals, positioning Canada as a beacon of democracy in a time of global uncertainty. Our neighbors are no longer our allies, Angus warned. We are dealing with a regime next door that is ignoring the international rule of law, and we have to take this dead serious. His remarks highlight a growing fear that the United States, once a reliable partner, is now a destabilizing force on the global stage. The economic impact of the Canadian boycott. In response to Trump's actions, a grassroots movement urging Canadians to boycott American goods and travel has gained extraordinary momentum. Over 62,000 Canadians have signed the Pledge for Canada, vowing to prioritize Canadian-made products and cancel planned trips to the United States. This consumer backlash is already having tangible effects on the American economy. Consider the tourism industry. If just 10% of Canadians follow through on their pledge to avoid U.S. travel, it would threaten over $2 billion in revenue and 140,000 American jobs. Early indications suggest the boycott's impact may be even more severe. States like Texas and Kentucky, which rely heavily on Canadian tourism and exports, are already feeling the pinch. Sales of Kentucky bourbon, for example, have plummeted due to the boycott. Angus specifically called out Texas Governor Greg Abbott, who had previously suggested that Canada would learn a lesson from Trump's aggressive posture. "Oh, really?" Angus retorted. "How about we teach you a lesson?" This defiant stance reflects a broader sentiment of Canadian resistance to external intimidation. The backlash isn't confined to the political and economic arenas. Canadian sports fans have taken to booing the American national anthem at major events, a symbolic rejection of the Trump administration's policies. Despite pleas from announcers to show respect, these vocal protests continue to grow louder, reflecting the depth of public frustration. One viral video, featuring a Canadian citizen outlining why they reject American-style governance, encapsulates this sentiment perfectly. In the clip, the speaker highlights key distinctions between the two countries: Canada's commitment to universal health care, lower rates of gun violence, and a strong environmental ethic. "We like our country, and we're happy with our independence," the speaker asserts, reflecting a widespread desire to preserve Canadian values against external pressure. Perhaps the most alarming aspect of Trump's rhetoric is his repeated suggestion that Canada should become a U.S. state. Far from an offhand remark, this idea is part of a broader authoritarian narrative that seeks to undermine the sovereignty of independent nations. Trump's insistence that Canada doesn't pay its fair share for NATO is a falsehood, yet it serves to justify his aggressive posturing. Charlie Angus' speech made clear that Canadians will not tolerate such threats. "We will not bend," he declared. "And we will never, ever kiss the ring of that gangster from Mar-a-Lago." This firm rejection of Trump's imperial ambitions sends a powerful message. Canada is prepared to defend its independence. The global implications of Trump's authoritarianism. Canada's struggle against Trumpism is not an isolated issue. It is part of a larger battle for the future of democratic governance. With authoritarian figures like Elon Musk and Vladimir Putin working to reshape the global order, democratic nations must stand together to resist their influence. German Defense Minister Boris Pistorius recently criticized Trump's negotiating tactics, warning against conceding key principles before discussions even begin. This international pushback underscores the growing recognition that Trump's authoritarian ambitions pose a threat not just to Canada, but to the world's. Charlie Angus' impassioned speech was more than just political rhetoric. It was a call to arms for Canadians to defend their sovereignty against external threats. As Trump's authoritarian ambitions intensify, the Canadian people are responding with unity and resolve. From grassroots boycotts to cultural protests, the message is clear: Canada will not be bullied. This struggle extends beyond Canada's borders. It is a fight for the very principles of democracy, the rule of law, and national sovereignty. As authoritarian figures attempt to rewrite the global order, the world is watching how Canada responds. For those who value freedom and independence, the stakes have never been higher. And if Charlie Angus' speech is any indication, Canadians are ready to stand their ground.